Hey, how's the sound? All is well. Oh, lovely. Oh, it's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for having me here. Many of you I do know, which is so lovely. And I'll be coming there again very soon.
Jomon,
Yes.
this is Junio. I'll let you introduce yourself to everyone. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is Jomon Martin, and I currently live at Great Vow Zen Monastery. That is as of July 1. But I've been practicing with the Zen community of Oregon for around 20 years. And it's a pleasure to get to join your Sangha, the Sangha Jewel Temple, filling in for Mushin tonight. And I know that there are some changes happening, everywhere certainly, but also for Sangha Jewel. So the title of this talk is Constant Change is the Real Life. Constant change is the real life. Are we ready to begin? Have we done all the things?
We are ready.
All right, great, great. So the title is kind of phrased in an interesting way, isn't it? Constant change is the real life. And that comes from a larger quote from Taizan Maizumi Roshi. And I'll speak a little bit about who he was, but um, I'll read a little more of the quote here where it originates. Constant change is the real life and is therefore unknowable. Since we also are constantly changing, each of us is also unknowable. And this unknowable, impersonal, no self, not fixed in one way or another by any kind of values or attachments, is working perfectly. So I'll say that again. Constant change is the real life and is therefore unknowable. Since we also are constantly changing, each of us is also unknowable. And this unknowable, impersonal no self, not fixed in one way or another by any kind of values or attachments, is working perfectly. So constant change is the real life, therefore unknowable. And you may have noticed that changes are everywhere, that this is a world of complete instability, wars, dissolving social safety nets, polarization in communities. Everybody's getting older. People are born. We gain things, we lose things. We experience illness, dying, more people being born. And as I mentioned, this Sangha is changing. Sangha Jewel Temple has a lot going on. I got the wonderful mailing of the brochure about the new assistant teachers, and there's probably a lot of feelings about that. Totally right on time, working perfectly. So, just touching tonight on the reality of constant change and to highlight how our practice helps us meet this reality squarely, whether that's assistant teachers, whether that's a war in the world, war in our relationships. What is driving these wars? What is driving us to be at war with the way things are, with reality? And how do we get stuck in our concepts about the world? And how do we get unstuck? So, I want to share some teachings from the Diamond Sutra that addresses many of these aspects. I'll introduce the Diamond Sutra in a little bit if you're not familiar with it. So the quote I shared earlier from Maizumi Roshi is from a talk he gave on the 3 Dharma seals. Does anybody know what the three Dharma seals are out there in Sangajul land? Can somebody shout out some of them? One or all of them? The three Dharma seals.
No, no takers.
It's not impermanence, no self, and dukkha anicca anatta, is it?
Yes, that's right. So you could suffering, impermanence, and no self. Suffering, and that's how you can tell that a teaching is the Buddha Dharma, that it has these elements. The true the Buddha will have some aspect of these. And for many of us, I mean, we kind of get suffering, right? Like that one's pretty easy. You're grasping, you're pushing away, you're suffering. Impermanence, we kind of get that one too. I can see that I used to have a bowl of ice cream and now I don't anymore. But the no self one can be a little tricky, or it seems a little harder. They are all embedded in each other. So he mentions in that quote the unknowable, impersonal no self, not fixed in any one way or another by any kind of values or attachments, and it's working perfectly. So that's one way that we can get at no self, is looking at impermanence. So Maizumi Roshi is essentially my Dharma grandfather. He is a teacher of Chozen and Hogen's. He is the founder, he's deceased. He was the founder of the Zen community of Los Angeles. He immigrated from Japan to the United States and began teaching in the 60s, and developed this community of students in the Los Angeles area. And Chozen and Hogen practiced there for quite a while. Important to note about Maizumi that he struggled with alcoholism and was actually treated at the Betty Ford Center in the early 80s. And when that happened, just like any family that's troubled by addiction, the Sangha kind of blew up around that time, and many things were revealed, such as affairs and other teacher misconduct. In the mid 90s, he died of a relapse. But he was also, and it's important to note, a very powerful teacher of real depth, and someone who inspired a great many people in our lineage, called the White Plum. So his legacy reverberates strongly still today and in this very moment. So I want to share with you even more context of that quote, some of the parts that precede the quote. He says, "Everything is in constant change. I've already mentioned one of the teachings of the Abhidharma, that in just 1 second, life is changing thousands and thousands of times. In 1 second, our conscious awareness simply cannot follow such rapid change. And yet, we are living this life. How are we living it? What kind of things do we spend our time thinking about? The past is already gone, yet we cling to it. The future is not yet here, but we dwell on it. Even when we talk about now, there is no such thing. Even as we talk, the now we are talking about is already gone. The life in our heads, the life we think is our life, is not our real life. Our real life is the life of everything and everyone. We constantly talk about doing this and doing that, about things already gone or yet to come. We play with our life in our heads, but this is not our real existence. We should not mix them up. I'm not devaluing thoughts. Just do not mix up what we think with what actually is. Buddha said that everything is constantly changing. Constant change is the real life and is therefore unknowable. Since we are constantly changing, each of us is also unknowable. And this unknowable, impersonal, no self, not fixed in one way or another by any kind of values or attachments, is working perfectly. That no self is not attached to anything, so it can work with everything. Do you understand impermanence? This no fixed thing, which is no self? When you do not see this no self, suffering is waiting for you. When you see that nothing is fixed, there is peace. Impermanence is also an encouragement for our practice. When you enter practice through feeling impermanence, your practice will be stronger and you will not easily regress. These three Dharma seals are not three different things, but rather one thing, your life from three different perspectives. So that's the whole context of this beautiful quote, this beautiful pointer. Constant change is the real life and therefore unknowable. But we do get stuck, though. We do get stuck in a belief that things are fixed, that things are frozen, or that things are things. The wisdom teachings of the Buddha Dharma help us work with this. So in Buddhism, we often talk about the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion, and we need both. Sometimes wisdom is referred to as prajna. It's another word for wisdom. So this is where the Diamond Sutra comes in. The Diamond Sutra is one of the Prajna Paramita texts, the perfection of wisdom text. And it's repetitive because before the Buddha's teachings were written down, they were recited, memorized and recited over and over and over. That's how they were memorized. That's how they were taught. That's how they were learned. And that's how they were passed down. So not only is recitation an interesting way to preserve something in this human realm, but it really kind of gets into our bodies in a different way when we recite a text over and over again. So the whole title of the Diamond Sutra is really called The Perfection of Wisdom Text That Cuts Like a Thunderbolt. And it basically is about cutting through the hardness of a diamond can cut through anything else. Interesting to note that the Diamond Sutra is the oldest printed book in the world. And this book was found to have been in about 868 in the Common Era in China. It's a block print that's about 17.5 feet long. And that's about 600 years older than the Gutenberg Bible, which many of us were told was the earliest printed book ever. So it had been hidden in a cave about 200 years after it had been printed and found in 1900, translated. So Prajna Paramita, again, is the perfection of wisdom. And one of the paramitas in a list that includes other perfections like generosity, patience, diligence, ethics, things like that. So you may be familiar with this poem from the Diamond Sutra, and maybe you do the chant. It might be in your chant book. The one that goes, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. So is this fleeting world. It's a beautiful pointer towards impermanence. But most of the sutra takes place in terms of a conversation between the Buddha and one of his disciples named Subhuti. Whereas many sutras take place sometimes in magical realms, replete with bodhisattvas and miraculous events, this one, the Buddha is just completing his morning alms rounds. He eats, he washes his feet, and then he sits down. just doing ordinary activity. And then Subhuti raises a question and he asks the Buddha, "You're always so generous with your teaching, sir. When sincere men and women seek enlightenment, what should they do and how should they control their minds?" So what should we do? How do we control our minds to as we seek enlightenment? The Buddha said, "That's an excellent question, Subhuti. If sincere men and women seek enlightenment, it is essential for them to control their minds. Listen, and I will explain how." So that's wonderful. He's going to tell us how. He says, "All bodhisattvas who sincerely seek the truth should control their minds by focusing on one thought only. When I attain enlightenment, I will liberate all sentient beings in every realm of the universe and allow them to pass into the eternal peace of nirvana. And yet, when vast, uncountable, unthinkable myriads of beings have been liberated, in reality, no being has been liberated. Why? Because no one who is a true bodhisattva entertains such concepts as self and other. Thus, in reality, there is no self to attain enlightenment and no sentient beings to be liberated." Okay, so that's a lot right there. Indeed, there's these two parts that are repeated throughout the sutra. There's this focus on the liberation of others. Yes, we as bodhisattvas are all about that. And yes, there's not really any self or others. So both at the same time, this paradox, this tension that's being held together here. We can sometimes call this wish for the well-being of others, this wish to liberate all beings, we call that bodhicitta, an awakened heart or awakened heart mind. And I like Norman Fisher's definition of bodhicitta, a spontaneous wish to attain enlightenment that is motivated by a great compassion for all sentient beings, accompanied by a falling away of the attachment to the illusion of an inherently existing self. I'll read that again because it's got both of the wings embedded in it. A spontaneous wish to attain enlightenment, motivated by great compassion for all sentient beings, accompanied by a falling away of the attachment to the illusion of an inherently existing self. So I want to just pause here for a second and say, if none of this is making sense, or if this is like, whoa, Jomon, we're getting like kind of out there, that's okay. There, in many of our chants, there are lines that sort of don't seem to make logical sense, aren't there? And it can be that after some practice and exposure to these chants and these sutras and these teachings, that eventually something kind of blossoms in our practice. So just consider this the watering of the seed of prajnaparamita. Just in talking about it, just let it flow over you. Just let it soak in. And maybe it doesn't seem like anything's happening, but this is nourishing the part of you that knows exactly what this is, that already is this. So I just wanted to reassure you, anyone that, and also these things are impossible to talk about, really. This kind of prajna wisdom is impossible to capture in words. So anything I say isn't it. And so we take that limited ability and yet can apply it to that which we already are. Okay. So what I really want to say is that we can begin to become aware of our tendency to retreat into a world of concepts. And this teaching kind of helps us undercut our tendency to retreat into a world of concepts by saying there's no such thing as a self or other. And yet we can experience them. That's why we call things self or other. That's why we call a bodhisattva, even though there's no such thing. So, what even are concepts? Let's maybe start there because that's pretty easier to apprehend, I think. Part of what we can call conceptual reality or apparent reality or conventional reality. I like to say that the IRS is pretty sure that I have a self, right? They're not impressed with the emptiness teachings. But this apparent reality, this conventional reality, is not the whole truth. But it can be experienced. So, for example, we all can experience the sky, right? We know that there's a sky, and yet, where is it? You know, can you wrap your arms around it? Can you truly say where it begins and ends? It can't really be apprehended specifically. Or our body is also something we can experience, and yet beyond our attempts to define it, when we truly experience it, it has kind of blurry boundaries. So, like, without looking at maybe your left hand or your right foot, can you feel into the shape of that area of what we call the body without having this imposition of what we think we should see, the shape of a hand, the shape of a foot? Can you feel the vagueness, really, of the sensation of hand or foot in that general vicinity? And where does the texture and temperature of the hand begin and end compared to what it's touching? A little harder to tell when we really experience it. So I want to offer another little exercise in how we see concepts and compare that to reality, this ungraspable reality. So the exercise is this. And for those of you in the Zendo, we'll just use the word Zendo as a concept. And maybe those of you online, it's whatever room you're in. So go ahead, everybody, and look around the room, look around the Zendo, wherever you are, and just get a good sense of what's in it so that you're really clear on the contents of the room, the light, the shadow, the details, all the colors, just really looking at this, what we can call a Zendo or what we can call a room. You're really into your visual field. Okay. And when you've got that good and absorbed, go ahead and close your eyes. And now take a moment to just recreate in your mind's eye the Zendo or the room that you're in. Really see if you can bring it back as clearly as possible. What are the details? Where are the objects? Light, color, shape. Bring it back as clearly in your mind as you can. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and notice what you missed. Would anybody like to say in the Zendo what you missed? Yes.
I missed the screen that's right next to the TV where your face is.
Huh? Right? Anybody else? Yes.
I missed the cushion on Mushin's chair.
Yep. Yep. Anybody else? Yeah.
I missed the stack of chairs by the window.
Yeah. So we can easily see that our idea, our concept of Zendo is flat, is two-dimensional, is not real. There's a lot missing that gets lost in translation. And we forget that all the time. We get in trouble when we mistake our concepts for reality, when we're relating to things like this, if it's the whole truth, when we relate to people like this, as if that's the whole truth, as if we know. So our concepts, our memory of things is a lot like our childhood drawings of reality, two-dimensional crayon drawings of reality. One of my art teachers in grade school would tell us no lollipop trees, right? It's just a little green circle on a brown stick. And we can relate to real trees that way. You know, when we're not paying attention, when we're not really looking at what's in front of us, when we're not really seeing the trees. There is, in fact, no such thing as a tree. There is a tree, there is a root system that's in the soil and the air and the sun, and the entire universe cannot be separated from a tree. And we can have an idea of the forest or even the garden. But if you take even one spoonful out of the garden, it's endless. It's a universe in and of itself, isn't it? So when we say garden, it's utterly limiting. It's utterly two-dimensional. And yet we treat these concepts as if they're true, as if they're real, and start to have opinions and views based on that. But when we really pay attention in this living moment, careful, detailed attention, just like you did when you first looked at the Zendo, that's where we see reality. And that's what we call suchness. Suchness, this unrepeatable moment, this free from concept, free from subject object distinction. It's all just like this. One of Maizumi Roshi's other Dharma heirs, Daido Luri, said, it's not like anything. Our life is not like anything, or the Buddha nature, or the way things are, is not like anything. He says, it is not metaphors, images, or thoughts. Indeed, it's not like anything. Don't be deluded. It is nothing other than what you do morning and night. It is nothing other than what you do morning and night. It's just this. And it's just like the sutra in which the Buddha is just going on begging rounds, eating some breakfast, washing his feet, sitting down, offering some teaching. It's just this. And another quote from a great teacher, D.T. Suzuki, says, Zen insists on handling the thing itself and not some empty abstraction. Zen insists on handling the thing itself and not some empty abstraction. Everything is and can only be being itself. When we see this, when we see that everything is alive, everything is participating, everything is moving. If you close your eyes and open your eyes again, things have changed. And you close your eyes and open your eyes again, things have changed. Everything is just flowing. When we see this, this is how we work with change. This is how we work with difficulties, this recognition of the continuous flow that animates our life, that connects our life to everything else. Instead of getting stuck in our ideas, instead of getting stuck in our two-dimensional worlds, our lollipop trees, when we think we know how it should be, when we think we know what you should do, when we think we know who you are or what I am, that's stuckness. That's identification. And that can be fatal. You know, certainly the basis for war or violence, human suffering, is defending I, me, and mine, defending territory. All based on concepts that live in our ideas of the past and the future. So our practice is like a life raft. Our practice is like a life raft on this river of change. And we can never be stuck when we do this, when we really remember that everything is just flowing, everything is now ready. Even if we do nothing, we are being carried constantly by this continuous flow. We can never be stuck. We can return to this unknowable present moment. And that's what our practice offers us. So, what is our actual experience? What is this life? It's really brave to ask this question. To hit the reset button is asking this question. What is this? To just pause and say, I don't know. I don't know what should happen. I don't know who this is. This moment, this person, this being is unknowable. So, how does that affect our interaction, especially in the difficulty in a moment of change and uncertainty? A beautiful koan that includes in it the phrase, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. And that's really true. It's kind of like when you go traveling, which is also what that koan is about. You keep things fresh. You don't have maybe expectations necessarily, especially if you go to a foreign country where people just do everything differently. There's a freedom in that, an openness in that, a sense of wonder in that, where all of our assumptions get upended. And it feels quite invigorating, doesn't it? So we can always return to this unknowable present moment. So go ahead and just feel into the body right now without even knowing that this is a body. Just feeling sensation. What do you notice that's changing? What do you notice that's new? Just take a moment to sense into this continuous flow that's right here. What's moving? What's changing? What is this? So, this is a way that our practice truly supports us, truly sustains us. We can certainly remind each other that we have this capacity. We can also remind ourselves about the simple fact of impermanence, even if we're not quite clear on this no self thing. We can much more readily remind ourselves about the truth of impermanence. We can see that sometimes that's a little more readily seen, readily available. And I always find that just the practice of noticing impermanence, noticing change, sometimes that can really be a sweetener. Sometimes we can really begin to appreciate things with that understanding. The title of Maizumi Roshi's book, where I derived that quote, is called Appreciate Your Life. And that was one of the things he liked to say quite a bit. Appreciate your life. It was a reminder that he would offer. And he, English was his second language. But in looking at translation, the beauty of that word appreciate has so many levels to it, right? We can appreciate meaning being thankful for, right? Oh, I appreciate that. But we can also appreciate our life the way we might appreciate a work of art, or the way we might appreciate a beautiful jewel. So appreciate your life. You never know if this is the last time you'll actually be here. And what does that do when we bring that truth forward? When we are honest with ourselves, when we live with the very truth of impermanence. This may be the last time we all see each other ever. What happens when you entertain that thought? Would anybody, or that truth, would anybody care to share what happens when you practice with that? Anybody? I might not see everybody here ever again.
You get real.
Yeah. How so?
Like you don't take it for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go, oh my gosh, this could be it. This is it.
Yeah. This is it. This is it. Anybody else? Yes.
I rented a film for guests Friday night, and it lasted 48 hours. We watched it within the first 2 hours of renting it. And then for the rest of the weekend, I would see it's going to expire in 28 hours, in 16 hours. The movie's going to expire in 4 hours. I'm like, I could watch it again. But really, I want to just say, it was pulling me out of my flow. I'm living my life, and yet I'm being invited to take a last look at something that's going to disappear in a matter of minutes. It's like, maybe you get real, or maybe you get unreal. You want to cling to it. It's like, no, I don't even want to know this. I want to just keep playing my, reaching for the Dharma gates, and just like, don't bother me with that. I don't need to know everything.
Right. Yes. I think there's like that is apparently a marketing technique, right? Like soon this will go away. You have to, do the action item right now because scarcity. Here's your opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, having urgency and grasping, that may be an unintentional side effect. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yes. Yes.
It's just, and this isn't specifically about not seeing everyone, but it was about, I could be done. I could die in the next minute, right? And my thought was, and I've noticed this coming up recently, I haven't sorted my storage unit, and I would be leaving it for my partner to deal with, and that is just awful. And I go to this judgy place and this, oh no, there's this thing I didn't do. I'm not sure what to do with that inside.
I think that's really, it's actually a compassionate thought, isn't it? It's not about you, it's about them. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to burden them, or I don't want to leave this thing undone. That's not your intention to do. And with the thought of, oh gosh, I may not have all my affairs in order. There's maybe a titch of urgency that wants to be directed towards getting that out of the way for your partner, or taking care of something that's yours to take care of, so sometimes when we practice with these Dharma seals, it's clarifying. It can be clarifying of what's really important to us, or the direction of our life, where it actually wants to go. Yeah, what's real, what's true. Anybody else want to share anything about that? Yes.
I think, the thought that, maybe we would never be here together again, makes me want to appreciate the here and now even more. I feel so fortunate to be where I am in this facility with all these really neat people.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's just appreciating right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That is available all the time. That is available wherever we are. We can never be stuck. Let me see. So I want to offer you one of my favorite poems. And it, I think, does a wonderful job of illustrating this truth of both impermanence and, you can call it no self. You can, Thich Nhat Hanh often calls it interbeing, that there's no singular identifiable self nature in anything. And it's a Mary Oliver poem, and it's called Gannets. And gannets are like a little white seabird. Gannets by Mary Oliver. I am watching the white gannets blaze down into the water with the power of blunt spears and a stunning accuracy. Even though the sea is riled and boiling and gray with fog, and the fish are nowhere to be seen, they fall. They explode into the water like white gloves. Then they vanish. Then they climb out again from the cliff of the wave like white flowers. And still, I think that nothing in this world moves but as a positive power. Even the fish finning down into the current or collapsing in the red purse of the beak are only interrupted from their own pursuit of whatever it is that fills their bellies. And I say, life is real and pain is real, but death is an imposter. And if I could be what once I was, like the wolf or the bear standing on the cold shore, I would still see it, how the fish simply escape this time, or how they slide down into a black fire for a moment, then rise from the water, inseparable from the gannet's wings. I love that poem about interbeing. So so I encourage you to practice with the Dharma seals, not the sea seals, the ocean seals, although those are cute. But Dharma seals, noticing how the inevitable instability of life, kind of like you've only got 2 more hours to watch this movie, is suffering. Sort of grasping is suffering. That's one of them. We can notice that and inquire into it. What is this? We can notice the simple truth, the obvious truth of impermanence. And to practice that, one of Chosen's mindfulness tasks is to just practice with the phrase, this person could die tonight, or this person may die tonight. What if you looked at each person with that thought, including yourself in the mirror? This person may die tonight. There's something sweet or precious that can sometimes come alive when we are able to really face that truth. And then the Dharma skill of self or interbeing, at least just seeing our concepts for what they are, to practice noticing how we freeze our life into these, kind of force them into these little boxes. Maybe a little box has a person's name on it of who you think they are. And when really they're as unknowable as you are. Unknowable. And therefore, there's always a chance for growth, for surprise. Never stuck. So that's my hope and wish for all of you. Maybe I'll close just with that my Zoomy quote again. How about that? It's so beautiful. Constant change is the real life and therefore unknowable. Since we also are constantly changing, each of us is also unknowable. And this unknowable, impersonal, no self, not fixed in one way or another by any kind of values or attachments, is working perfectly. Thank you, everybody, for your kind attention.
Page 5, please.